Okay, folks, let's try this again. RPG a day. Um, weeks one and almost two. Oh, I finally got some time to actually, put this stuff together. I spent a week at Gen Con running, 2 games a day, and then a week here with my buddy Bruce, going through the DC area, seeing sites with him. And so the last 2 weeks, I have been like out of contact with all the online things that I used to follow and do. Well, I've got some time this afternoon, so let's do this. Okay, RPG a Day 2023. Uh, this year, I'm going to do the first 13, and then on the 19th, I'll do through the 19th, and then on the last day, I'll do the rest. I think that's how I'm going to do it this year. So, the first RPG played this year. Well, the first RPG I played this year is pretty much the only RPG I've played this year, and it's run by my buddy Bruce. Um, and it was initially based on RQ3, but then we had some problems with converting, D&D stuff to some kind of uh, believable economic system. And then RQG came out with weapons and equipment, and the blue book's got some economics in it too as well. So okay, so we're using RQG economics. Oh, and he liked high magic, and RQ3 doesn't really have high magic, so he imported Spell Law from Iron Crown Enterprises. That's gone through some perturbations. Gone through some changes. Um, as we're trying to, okay, this is what it says. This is what he wants to emulate, and this is the mechanics we're using. And the three of them don't always match up. Um, but then Chaosium came out with BRP, their universal game engine, and I like to say newer is not always better. There is some stuff in BRP that going, ooh, yeah, and this is not the big gold book. It's a rewrite. Going, ooh, I like that. Maybe I'll take that piece in. I'll take that piece in. But there's other things like their fumble charts and stuff. Instead of having like 30 or more like we have with our other systems, they only got like a dozen different things. Not quite as crunchy as I like. But he's pulling some stuff from BRP. What exactly he's pulling, I'm not sure. I know he did the fumble chart because we ran that in our last game. But that's the game I'm not running. I'm playing in. It's called Eldorath. That's the world is called. We used to do what's called Far Horizons, with a science fiction um, version of all this. Right? We went through a gate and then came out in this, high fantasy medieval magical world, and we're running. Okay. First RPG game master was my brother Alan. My buddy Brett and I went down to visit him in, I think it was Sandy, Utah. He was running a Tandy leather store, if I recall correctly. And he had Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and he had his rolled characters, and we went to the dungeon, and my guy died by wolves. And so Brett went back to town, I rolled another character, we went back to the dungeon, and my character got killed by wolves. I've told this story a number of times, and I actually mentioned this somewhere online, and somebody came back with if that happened to them, they'd never play again. I found a game that simulated medieval combat with dice, paper, and pencils. I was hooked. Okay, on the most recent game I bought. Not really a game, as a supplement. The Persopedia for RuneQuest. That was the first one I bought this year. The most recent one that I bought, however, was in fact a game. BRP. So that was an actual game that I did buy most recently at Gen Con, but I also picked up the Earth Goddesses and Lightbringers. If you can even hear that. Earth Goddesses and Lightbringers, right? Beautiful art, by the way. Very, very nice. helps bring the mystique or the motif come forward kind of thing. Okay. Oldest game I've played was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. We never got into OD&D. And RuneQuest we did. Plus at that time we had a bunch of different war gamers making RPGs, and so the rules were like 1.2.3.4.5 for this one thing. Yeah. Details. But we played a couple of those too. I don't remember offhand what they were. Okay, my favorite game that I never get to play. Merp. We should do it this way. Merp. Middle Earth role playing. This game hooked me. It hooked me. Worse than AD&D did, because that it also brought in the Tolkien-esque stuff that I not really grown up but was familiar with. And even though it's not quite Death by a Thousand Charts, they do have a number of tables, but they're all condensed down. Condensed down. What? Find it real quick. Combat charts. But having the different stuff for the different races, I really, really liked that, how it worked. The way the percentile stuff goes wasn't so hot, but that's okay. Did I just pass it? Yeah, here we go. Combat charts. They can be readable. I don't think so, but it's got four of them on one page. One-handed slashing, one-handed concussion, two-handed weapons, missile weapons. Not too difficult, but greedy enough. And just, Tolkien-esque. All right, what else? What else? Smartest RPG I've played. Now, I don't really think of games being dumb or smart. They're simple and there's complex. And RQG is, I believe, the most complex game that I have been playing. Were there any other ones before that, though, that were... Oh, duh, Harnmaster. Harnmaster is the most complex game I have ever played. But it is smart in the way that you don't have hit points, right? As you take damage, you're less able of doing things, so all your skills go down. But you take injury points. It's great, and it's not so much how much damage you do, it's the effects of your weapons. Your weapon cross-references with the type of armor for the location that you hit, yeah? And the impact you do gives you a result, and that result says things like fumble 3 or stumble 2 or K5, that kind of thing. All right. Favorite character. My favorite character's name is Samantha. She is the daughter of a pirate prince or pirate king from Oban. She was originally rolled up in the D&D game we were playing, and we tweaked D&D early on lots of different ways. The most obvious I remember offhand is spells, right? You used to memorize, like I had 2 first level spells and 1 second level spell memorized. And we converted that all into spell points. So you got 2 points for those 2 first level spells and 2 points for that second level spell. So you had 4 spell points of the spells you had memorized that you could cast in any way, form, or shape. But she was a cleric assassin. She was worshiping. She was a worshiper of Aram, the god dead. She's a pirate, right? She fought Florentine. Had a heavy crossbow for distant stuff. And partway through her development, we switched from D&D to RuneQuest, which was RQ2 at the time. Well, would have been now was RQ2. RQ Classic, what do they call it? And so that changed some things, right? We didn't have memorized spells and spell points. We had memorized spells and we had magic points. And that was always fun. I remember her diving down into an orc hole once, and there was a goblet shaman there. And, she cast light so he could see. And he cast darkness, put the light out, and then she cast light so he could see. And we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until somebody ran out of magic points. That was a lot of fun. Also because she fought Florentine, was a frontline fighter kind of thing. She didn't need a whole lot of heavy armor, so she had plate on arms and legs, which could hit a lot in melee. But she only had chain and padding for her chest and abdomen, because your chest and abdomen don't really get hit that often in melee. Now, firing a bow or thrusting with a spear, it's a little different, which is why RQ3 they had 2 charts. RQG dropped that second chart. Not sure why. Don't appreciate it. I brought it back for my game. Okay, fun, fun, fun things. Oh, my favorite dice. I bought these. I used to have black dice I liked, but that was kind of a D&D thing. But I've got these gold dice. Can you let me see those? There we go. But I lost the D20. One of my stupid cats knocked it out of my octagonal shaped dice tray. I've looked over the house twice, several times, still can't find it. But I do have to admit, I've got a soft spot for these metal dice. The red ones, they're both rose gold. Red I ordered. I wanted black, but for something with the black thing, so they gave me another option. I chose white. But I love these things, these metal dice. But they're nice to feel, but they're hard to roll with because you don't want to be damaging things. Okay, my favorite tie-in fiction is the Silmarillion. That ancient Tolkien-esque high power stuff, which was sold me on Iron Crown Enterprises, just is there. It's feeding this animal in the back of my head. Glorfindel, right? Crossing the Arid Luin, in plate with a nice sword and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I love it. Okay, the weirdest game I've ever played. I actually had to stop my last recording because I couldn't remember what it was called. I had to go and search and search and search. Finally found it. Numenera. I played Numenera once. It was a few years ago with a local friend here, and yeah, obviously it works, right? But this was a different kind of mechanics. Um, I was happy with it. Doesn't necessarily float my boat, but it is what it is. Okay. Old game you still play. It's been a while, but I still pull out in the labyrinth to play my. It's not good in the game. What is it? Dark City games. These are solo, choose your own adventure type scenarios that are built around a similar mechanic. In some parts, it looks exactly the same as the fantasy trip. It's got some other stuff that it does as well. And so when I'm really hard up, I'll pull one out, roll up a couple, or build up a couple of characters and go adventuring. So that's the oldest thing I do. Otherwise, oh shoot, that's right. Um, I was overseas for like 13 years. Well, that was total. The 10 years ago, actually 12 years ago now, because I came back in 2011. From 2001 to 2011, I was in Okinawa, Japan, and we'd come back every like 3 years. Plus, on occasion, I had a TAD over here, so I'd come back to the States for those kinds of things. So, whenever I got to the States, though, we would get together our high school buddies. We called it a BroCon, and we would play. And we were doing Hardmaster um, until Ed's boys got old enough to actually play games, and teenagers. And at that point, we kind of switched back to 3.5. And so we've got this standing set of 3.5 stuff on the shelf that whenever we go back to Utah now, that I'm back in the States, my daughter will come down and her husband, and we'll get some of the boys and any of us that are in the area. Because if I'm going to Utah, you better come back down from Idaho, and and get together and we'll play. And we'll end up playing 3.5. Okay. Most memorable character demise. Now, it wasn't my character, but the most memorable character demise I recall was Brian Wages was playing a dwarf. Hardmaster, right? And we are underground and we're running from somebody. And there's an underground lake and there's a little dock and a boat. So we're heading for the boat. The dwarf jumps in the boat when he recalls, or rather the GM recalls, that he's got a deathly fear of the water. So he starts to freak out. So Terry, I think his character was a ranger, grabbed an oar and did an aim shot to the head, trying to knock him out, kind of thing, right? And he rolls his dice, and it was a critical success. Crit! And then, oh no, a crit, because crit can kill, right? And then he rolled his impact dice, cross-referenced the guy's helmet, and ended up being a K4, I think. So that's 4d6 against your Constitution, or you're dead. He didn't survive. he like rolled almost max. It was 20 something. It was massive. But dwarfs got high Constitution. I thought we were safe, and then all these sixes show up. Oh man. Okay, so that's 1 through 13. I'll be back next week. 7. Yeah, I'll be back next week with the middle third. Happy gaming.